In this video, I'm going to explain what functionalism is, and to do so, I'll break things down into 2 points. If you understand these 2 points, then you understand functionalism, okay? So, 2 points. 1, functionalism defines mental states functionally, not physically. 2, functionalists understand mental states as being multiply realizable. Okay, the first point then is that functionalists define mental states functionally, not physically. What does this mean? To define something physically is to define it or identify it as some sort of physical thing. It's to say it's made of or composed of physical stuff. Some things we do define physically. So, for instance, a diamond is a sort of physical object. It's something made of a certain sort of physical material. Similarly, for a nugget of gold. These things are defined physically. They're defined in terms of physical material that they're made of. But some things we define functionally, and what this means is that we define them in terms of what they do or what they function to produce, or in other words, in terms of their functional roles. So, for instance, a diamond it does do certain things. It can cut material, but it's not defined in that way. As I said, it's defined physically in terms of it's being made out of a certain sort of physical matter. But a doorstop, on the other hand, is not defined physically. It doesn't really matter what a doorstop is made out of, what its physical structure is. The definition of a doorstop is something which functions so as to keep doors open. So we define doorstops functionally. The functionalist says that mental states are defined functionally and not physically. So, for instance, the mental state type pain is defined not as a physical state of some sort, for instance, a brain state, a state consisting in brain activity, but is defined functionally. I think there are 2 steps to this. First of all, you find the functional role associated with the state type, and secondly, you then construct a definition of the state type in terms of that functional role. So how do you specify a functional role for a mental state type? You simply give a list of its typical causes and effects. So if you find a mental state type and you specify what typically causes it and the effects it typically has, both behavioral and psychological, you have just specified the functional role of the mental state type. That's all there is to it. And that's why the functional roles are also called causal roles or causal profiles. So here's a common toy example. Take the mental state type pain. What's the functional role of pain? Well, it's specified by this list. You say pain is typically caused by bodily injury or damage of some sort. It typically produces effects like wincing or crying, behavioral effects, and psychological effects like the desire not to be in pain. So we've taken step 1 for pain. We've found the causal profile or the functional role associated with that mental state type. The second step then in constructing a definition from a functionalist perspective is to use that functional role to define pain. So how does that work? Well, we do it as follows. We say that to be in pain is to be in some state or other which is typically caused by damage or bodily injury, which typically produces wincing or crying and so on, and psychological effects such as the desire not to be in pain. So in other words, with the functional role we've found, we construct the definition of pain by saying to be in pain is to be in some state or other which has the functional role of pain. That's what the functionalist says by way of giving a functional definition of pain, and you can apply similar ideas to other mental state types. And notice how this is really a functional definition, right? It's all done in terms of the functional role of pain, which we've got a sort of toy example of. And it's not done in terms of any physical structure or composition or physical state type. That just doesn't figure in the definition at all. It's a functional definition. Okay, then the second point is that functionalists take mental state types to be multiply realizable. What does that mean? So let's go back to the functional definition of pain. The functionalist says that to be in pain is to be in some state or other which has the functional role of pain. They don't say that to be in pain is to be in the state which has the functional role of pain, or the single state which has this role. For the functionalist, there's no such state. There's no such single state which has the functional role of pain. Many different state types can have the functional role of pain. That's why the functionalist says that to be in pain is to be in some state or other which has the functional role of pain. For example, in humans, let's suppose that it's a certain sort of brain state which has the functional role of pain. Call this B1. So that is, in humans, the state which is typically caused by bodily damage or injury, typically produces wincing and crying, and typically produces desires and so on. That is B1, right? In humans, B1, it's this brain state that has the functional role of pain. But now consider aliens, creatures from a planet far, far away. Let's just pretend that these aliens are somewhat similar to us. They behave in similar ways, and they're in the same psychological states as we are, such as pain. But crucially, they're made very differently. They're not made of the sorts of cells that we're made of, and they don't have brains, right? They're physically very different to us. So suppose then that one of these aliens is in pain. So according to the functionalist, they are in some state or other which has the functional role of pain. But this alien doesn't have a brain, so that state of it which has the functional role of pain cannot be B1, a brain state. So let's suppose it's just some state of the alien system, A1, right? So A1 is a state which has the functional role of pain. A1 is the state of the alien which is typically caused by bodily damage or injury, and typically produces wincing and crying, and typically produces certain desires and so on. Okay. So some terminology which philosophers use to describe what we've just set out is multiple realizability. In humans, pain is realized by B1, whereas in aliens, such as those we've described, it's realized by a different state altogether, A1. We can think of these realizing states as states which underpin pain, as states of creatures in virtue of which they are in pain, as the basis of pain in those creatures. And there will be multiple different realizing states for different creatures. So the functionalist picture is as follows. Being in pain is being in some state or other which has the functional role of pain. Pain is thus a functional state. But whenever a creature is in pain, is in this functional state, it's because they are in a realizer state, in a state that underpins it, right? That is, they're in some such underlying state which has the functional role of pain. To make this super clear, we can rejig the functional definition of pain as follows. Okay, to be in pain is to be in some state or other, for instance B1 or A1 or whatever, which realizes or underpins pain, that is, which has the functional role of pain and is thus the basis of pain in the creature in question. And finally, we can note that because of this, in a further respect, being in pain is like being a doorstop. If an object has the doorstop function, then that is it. It's a doorstop. Whatever physical structure it happens to have, if it has the function, it doesn't matter what the physical structure is, it's a doorstop. So for instance, here are two examples. So this Thomas here is a doorstop, but it has a particular physical structure. It's a cuddly toy, and it has a certain weight in its paws, which makes it keep the door open, right? But what about this? Well, this is also a doorstop, but it's very different to Thomas, right? It's really very different. And the features of it that make it a doorstop are its shape. It's a wedge shape, and it can thus keep doors open. Right, so things with very different physical structures can nonetheless be doorstops. Likewise, if a creature is in the functional state of pain, then that's it, they're in pain, right? If they've got the right functional role, they're in pain. Whatever the physical state that underlies that is, whatever the physical nature of the realizing state is, it just doesn't matter. As long as that underlying state functions in the right way, has the functional role of pain, then they are in pain.